Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts. If you listened to last week's episode, you heard about our new sponsor, Italki, and we've got a really cool promo going on with them where if you sign up for your first lesson, you actually get your second lesson free. And Italki has been super, super valuable to both Ryan and I for learning languages, specifically Spanish. And you can find that at www.theworldwanderers.com/Italki. So last week, we left you in the Grand Canyon. Maybe not in the Grand Canyon.
To the side.
On the edge of the South Rim, looking over at the fabulous view of the Grand Canyon. And today we're going to get you all the way back to Alberta. So we've got an exciting episode. And we're starting from the Grand Canyon and we made our way to Las Vegas. And Las Vegas, it seemed kind of like an obvious choice since it was right there. Ryan had never been before. I've been twice, but never with Ryan. So I thought it would be a fun adventure to go there with Ryan. It's kind of interesting going to a place like Las Vegas when you're on more of like a road trip style budget, which for us was a little bit lower cost. But I think that it was a reminder that you can still do something like Vegas fairly affordably.
Yeah, and we had been really relying on Airbnb and couch surfing for basically everywhere else on our trip. So going to Vegas, we were like, okay, it's Vegas. Like we should probably stay in a hotel. We checked out Airbnb. There was a few good deals, but then we just decided to go for Priceline and do the like hot whatever deal where it doesn't tell you actually which hotel you're going to be staying in, just like a price and a category. So we did that, found a hotel. We ended up staying at the Tropicana, which is decent, but nothing special.
Did we choose 3-star or 4-star?
We chose a 4-star hotel.
Yeah,
we were kind of like, we had this like picture in our heads of like nice hotel.
Well, it's like I've been twice before, so I've like seen most of the hotels that are on the main strip. So we choose an area on the strip, and I'm like, yeah, cool. There's lots of sweet hotels, and we end up.
We might be in the MGM or something cool.
Or like New York, and we end up across the street from New York, and beside MGM at Tropicana, which is like not the nicest hotel, but it was fine for our needs. You really don't spend that much time in your hotel when you're in Vegas. But it's just kind of funny where it's like, you know, the ... it's happening as it's like loading your hotel. And then it's like, and Tropicana. It's like exactly how he felt.
So we're going to jump into a clip that we recorded from our hotel room just after we arrived in Vegas.
Enjoy. We have made it to Las Vegas. What are your first impressions or first thoughts after spending our first night here?
I'm enjoying it so far. It's funny driving into Las Vegas. We were on the road from the Grand Canyon, so you're coming like up through Arizona and then into Nevada, and it's kind of like flat. There's mountains around, but flat, dry, and it was just like absurdly hot.
Yeah,
I think it got up to 48 Celsius on our car at one point.
Like 111 Fahrenheit.
So, yeah, you're driving in, like in the distance, there's kind of just like this mirage-y blur and it kind of looks like smog on the horizon. And then there's like, oh wow, there's like this gigantic needle thing. And like you can see skyscrapers up like in the shadow of the mountain. So it's kind of like cool to see that kind of like pop out of this like desert where there's like nothing around.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because it looks like there's not really much other than that. Like you see like the Luxor, which is a pyramid. Yeah, you can
see the rest of the city.
Yeah, and you see, I haven't really explored much off the strip in the last couple times that I've been here, but I don't really know what else, like what the downtown area is like, which I think we'll probably explore a little bit tonight.
Yeah, but then actually driving in through the city, you see it's actually like quite a large city. And then I think like pulling up to the strip is kind of like the, I guess, coolest / a bit weirdest experience. Like it's just like, wow, this is crazy. Like seeing gigantic pyramid, there's an Eiffel Tower in the distance. As we pulled up to our hotel, which is kind of right across from New York, I didn't even notice, but then Amanda pointed out, like, oh, look at New York. It's a whole bunch of different buildings. And then, it's one hotel that looks like it's like 6 different buildings from New York. which is crazy. There's a gigantic Statue of Liberty facing us out the window.
Yeah, we can see her right now. Hi, Lady Liberty.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think that a lot of, like, the Las Vegas entertainment scene isn't, like, completely my speed. Like, gambling and, like, clubbing was something I was more into, like, a few years ago.
Yeah.
But it's still just, like, amazing to see this, like, really fun, creative, different, unique city. Like, it's pretty amazing that people invested the time, the money to build a gigantic hotel that looks like New York, all these different buildings, and there's, like, a roller coaster. And it's amazing that there's like a Paris replica and there's, like, a Venice replica. Like, it's one of those things where you, like, feel, like, pretty grateful to be alive right now.
Yeah.
Like, if someone from like 100 years ago came to Vegas, they'd be like, what the fuck?
Like,
what is happening
came
here?
right now, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point.
Like, it's just so amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so something that's really interesting about Las Vegas is how long it takes to get everywhere. Like, seeing the Strip from a distance, it looks so small, and I told Ryan, like, it's not small, it's massive. It takes forever to get from one place to another. And we experienced that yesterday. We were across from New York, going to a restaurant on, I guess, the north side of New York, which is a ways from us, and it's like 15 minutes walking just to get that far. It's just, like, so crazy how long it takes you to get from one point to the other. But we are going out to get some food and to explore a little bit more, hopefully to get some show tickets for tonight, and we'll check in a little bit later.
Yeah.
So going into a trip in Vegas, we had basically one day, and our main priorities weren't to go gambling or clubbing. Really, we're just like, oh, we're going to go explore, check out a bunch of these hotels, see what's cool, go to a show at night, eat some good food, and just kind of, like, soak in how, like, weird and interesting this place is.
So we set out from our hotel and we made our way sort of north on the Strip, I'm pretty sure. Started walking on the side that Tropicana was on. We stopped at the Hard Rock Cafe, which was the pretty mediocre choice. So got some breakfast there and then continued on our way to get show tickets from one of the cheap show ticket booths. And I really wanted to see O, and Ryan was interested in seeing Love. I wasn't opposed to it, but I've seen it before. And we got there and it actually wasn't playing on the night that we were there. Neither of them were. So we ended up getting tickets to Zoomanity, which is the sex show, like the sex Cirque du Soleil.
But not an actual sex show.
Oh, yeah, not an actual. It's like the sexual Cirque du Soleil. And so we had tickets for that for 8 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 7 p.m. And so we're like, okay, sweet, we've got the entire day up until then. And when it's noon, you're like, sweet, I've got like 6 hours to explore Vegas. Like, that's tons of time. But really, when you're going into each hotel and you're kind of looking around, maybe like putting a couple bucks into a slot machine and like tinkering around with that a little bit, and then you wander a little bit further and then you get lost a little bit, you kind of end up like killing a lot of time just on the Strip. And so we made it up to see Paris and the Venetian, and we went into Caesar's Palace and Bellagio, which are all really, really fabulous hotels. And then we kind of realized that it was like, I think it was like 4:30 or 5 p.m. And we're like, shoot, we need to get an Uber and we need to get back to our hotel so we can change and go grab food before this show starts. And do you want to talk a little bit about what getting an Uber was like?
Yeah, so it's just a gigantic pain in the ass is what it's like. Because the actual like Strip or whatever the street's called, Las Vegas Boulevard maybe.
Yeah, they call it the Strip though.
You can't just like walk out to the street and pick up a car like you would in any other city. It's all kind of blocked off a lot of the time and not really accessible. So to find it, you have to go to a hotel, but then most hotels have a designated area for Uber pickup. It's not just the front. And a lot of the hotels are like backed off. So we were at the Bellagio, went out to watch the fountain show, and then after that we're like, okay, let's catch an Uber. And we're like literally right by the street. But you can't pick one up on the street, so we ended up walking
like just for
forever.
ages.
We're like, oh, we'll just walk up the street find a spot where we can stand. Pull out the app, and it's like, oh no, you can't pick up here. Like, you need to go to the designated area.
Yeah, it's like the app knows, like it'll move your actual like pickup point because you can only get picked up from certain point. And so in Vegas, you almost never cross on the actual street. You usually go up an escalator, and then you go into like sort of a +15 style that's open, obviously, because it's a lot warmer in Vegas than it is up here in Alberta. And then you can go like down another side or into a hotel, and like it can be very confusing doing that. And so it makes it kind of complicated to find something other than a taxi, because taxis have like these pickup lines at the front of hotels, but it seems like Uber's been like bumped to the back. So I don't know the diplomatic relations between Uber and taxis, but it seems to be a common thing where taxi drivers just like hate Uber drivers, and so Uber gets like shoved into the back. But I would definitely recommend taking Uber while you're there, even though it can be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, and so during that day, some of the highlights of the things we did, what were those?
Seeing the Bellagio again was really cool for me, and I really like Caesar's Palace. So just like walking through the Forum shops, there's like a really cool circular escalator. So it's like a circular staircase, but it's an escalator. And
but like really long curve. It's not like a tight.
Yeah, like escalator style.
But yeah, I think it's still pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I think that is a highlight. Just seeing like your reactions to everything was pretty cool for me, to see the things that you thought were amazing and the things you didn't think were amazing. Stopping in to get margaritas at Margaritaville is always a good time.
Yeah, so the big highlights were just exploring cool buildings. It's really fun to go from, like, you walk into New York, and you're like, oh, this is fun. There's like tiny buildings, looks like New York. And then not too far up the street, you can go into Paris, and there's an Eiffel Tower, very Parisian look to everything, which is really cool. And then you continue up, and not too long, you're in the Venetian, which has like a little canal thing, cool roof, cool like facades on all these fake buildings inside as well. So just exploring these different buildings and these different themes is really cool. Then we actually tried out an oxygen bar at the Venetian.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was definitely a highlight. I mean, we had been like go with our road trip. Like, we went from like Arches National Park to Monument Valley to Grand Canyon National Park. And so I was pretty tired. Like, Vegas is just exhausting. And they say that the oxygen bar is like taking a nap. And I actually felt like the positive effects of that. I would 100% like pay money to do that constantly.
Yeah. So you sit down at kind of like a bar stool, and there's these like colored tubes of water that I guess they put the oxygen through to get the flavor sitting in front of you. And then you sit there, you put it in your nose. There's one tube for each nostril, and it kind of rests around the back of your head. And then you sit there for 20 minutes getting your oxygen. But while you're doing that, the people are it's kind of like all these made on TV products that they're trying to sell you, essentially. So they give you like a back massage with this like back massage gadget, and then a head massage with a head massage gadget, like
with 3 gadgets.
And
it's
then
just
like,
so
here,
splendid.
Have a shot of this, and then you're like, oh shit, that cost $5. And then, then they put like one of these massage kits on you.
Oh, it's so good.
Electro stimulating thing. So that was kind of a fun thing to try out.
Yeah, I thought it was a good experience. I felt really good after. And then from there, we made our way back to our hotel, and we got...
Yeah, a very long, extended journey back to our hotel.
Yeah, I mean, it took us ages to get back. So we just had enough time to like change our clothes and basically walk over to New York, where Zumanity, the show we were saying, was playing, and we grabbed some food, and then we went into the show. What did you think of the show? Because you haven't seen too much Cirque du Soleil. You saw one in Atlanta, but...
Yeah, so we had been to Curios when it was in Atlanta, which was pretty fun. But so this one's in... It's a pretty small theater. There's only... Is there even a balcony?
Yeah, there was a balcony.
But I don't know, probably less than 1,000 people.
Wait, was there a balcony at Curios or at Zumanity?
No, at Zumanity.
Yeah, there was a balcony.
So I don't know how many people, like maybe 1,000. Really tight, small theater.
Yeah. It was intimate.
With a stage in the middle. And so the whole thing's kind of like themed around like being like erotic. So like males and females, just a lot of like sparkly G-strings.
Yeah, and like really cool Cirque du Soleil stuff with like the
Yeah.
flexibility and the strength, but just all done in like less clothes than normal and sort of an overall sensual, erotic theme to it. So we had a margarita with dinner. And we also got drinks for the show. And I would definitely recommend that aspect of it because it just makes you a little bit more open to what's happening on stage, which is a little bit provocative.
The only thing that was like awkward from my perspective was just they would kind of continually pull people out from the audience and make them engage in sort of like weird activities. And I was just like, because we were sitting right on not in the front, but like right on a row. And I was like, please do not let them come over here and try to like put me in this position.
Yeah.
Not prepared to deal with this.
Yeah, definitely. But I thought it was good overall. I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, it was fun. It was like a nice way to get outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah, totally. And so the following day, we packed up our stuff and we left Vegas. So something that's been sort of a consistent theme for our entire road trip and that you would have heard in part 1, and if you didn't hear, go back and listen to the episode, is that it can be kind of complicated when you're on a budget and when you're booking last minute to find a place to stay in a national park. And so from Vegas, we wanted to cross through and go into Yosemite National Park. Kind of made the most sense with the direction that we were going. And so we were looking for somewhere affordable to stay and ended up finding a couch surfing opportunity that was on the west side of the park. And so Vegas is obviously on the east side in Nevada. And so when I looked at it, it kind of made the most sense to me. Like, okay, so we'll drive through Yosemite, we'll do a little bit of like a walk, and then we'll make our way to this couch surfing place that's on like the other side of the park. But the drive itself from point A to point B was actually like 8.5 hours. And so by the time we actually got into Yosemite, it was like, I don't know, like 5 p.m. or something. And it's not really like a good time to hike. We want to get out of the park before it's dark. And so when we arrived at the place we were staying, I kind of felt like we'd done it a little bit wrong. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it was one of those situations where we kind of committed to one thing and then didn't keep our minds open enough to the other options. So we were like, oh, let's couch surf. And then we found one that was on the other side of the park, and we tried to like make our plans work around that because it would have been expensive to stay on the east side somewhere. But looking back on it now, it would be so much worth it to pay, $100, even more to stay somewhere else on the one side, just to save us all that time going all the way across and through, and then like an hour out, and then coming all the way back, and then coming all the way back again.
Yeah, definitely, because we didn't end up even hiking Yosemite the day that we traveled. So it's like we stayed, an hour and a half to 2 hours outside of the park, and then the next day we make like that entire drive again. So on a day that was supposed to be just a hiking day and not a driving day, we drove like a good 4 to 5 hours. So definitely something to consider if you're in that area. Really do your research. I think that it was kind of like rushed and sporadic by me, and I found this couch surfing opportunity and was like, yes, we've got to do this. It's free. And, there's just a whole bunch of stuff that went kind of awry with that.
So we headed out of Las Vegas, drove through Yosemite to a town on the west side of the park where we had a couch surfing booked. But things didn't turn out exactly as we had planned. So we just pulled out of the Holiday Inn.
No, the Best Western.
The Best Western, right. And we had a little interesting adventure last night. Do you want to give a recap, Amanda?
Why don't you start?
Okay. So when we were setting out for this trip, we were like, let's do a bunch of couch surfing. We can make a couch surfing episode about our road trip across the states where we're staying at all these couch surfing places.
I think it was also about like saving money too. Like I know I was like, I want to spend like barely any money on this road trip. Like if we can couch surf everywhere we go, gas is super affordable in the US, like we'll eat cheap, like this road trip is going to be super affordable. I think that was my thought process.
And so on night 2, we did our first couch surf in Oklahoma City. But then, since then, when we went to Utah, couldn't really find anything. Flagstaff, couldn't really find anything.
New Mexico.
Yeah, Vegas. Just wasn't really working out. So we found another one near Yosemite. And the couch surf that we were staying at, they didn't have an extra room. So they're like, oh, hey, like, don't worry about it. You can stay at this studio that I work at.
At my private dance studio.
At my private studio. And we were like, okay, that sounds like adventurous and fun. Like, this person owns a studio. We can go stay there. So we, that's not like typically our speed, but like, we're like, oh, this will be like a fun little like break and adventure switch up kind of thing. So we get into town yesterday, meet up with this person.
I mean, so let's even back up a little bit from that. We get there before, so we show up, I text him, we're here, we're sitting out front of this dance studio, and I'm like Googling it on the internet, and this dude's like not on the website for the studio, and then I'm like, what? Like, some person named Rachel owns this? Like, this seems a little bit weird. But it was already like, it felt like too late to pull out of it, so I was like, whatever, I'm sure it's fine. And then sure enough, guy pulls up, like, super, super nice, super cool. Definitely not his studio, though.
Yeah, so he just works there, which makes it kind of weird if you're gonna, like, sleep in a studio. You would like that person to, like, own it and probably have the decision rights to make that decision. So we were like, this is kind of weird, but the host has invited over a bunch of friends, so everyone's kind of like hanging out, doing their thing, and we're like, okay, like, yeah, we'll just like socialize and do whatever. So like 10:30 rolls around, they leave, and it's like time for us to like, I guess, go to sleep at this studio. So we were like, yeah, I don't know. Well,
I was like, I feel a bit weird, but you convinced me to stay here, and you're like, I feel super weird, and I don't want to stay here, so I'm going to convince you not to stay here, basically.
Yeah, so we ended up leaving. We went down the street, found a Best Western, which only had a wedding suite.
A bridal suite.
A bridal suite open.
With a sweet jacuzzi tub.
We did have a sweet jacuzzi tub. So we ended up negotiating a bit, because it was last minute, to get a tiny bit cheaper on the deal on the room, and we stayed instead in a bridal suite.
And I mean, the whole thing was kind of like a bit, I don't know, it felt a bit confusing. Like, I was like, why do I feel worried about this situation? Like, why can't I just be like easygoing and relaxed about it? And then there was this part of me that's like, what if somebody shows up and we get arrested for trespassing or something like that? Like, that just seems like, a worst case scenario, but it's definitely a possibility if this person doesn't know, this studio owner doesn't know we're staying there. Then I was thinking about, or we were talking about, if that was your business, like, how would you feel type thing. And I think that was ultimately where we decided to make the decision. But I think the most awkward part is that, like, we didn't tell the guy. So he texted me this morning, he's like, how'd you sleep? And I was like, yeah, good. Because I do think the intention there was, I don't know, was good. Like, I don't think he was intending to do anything bad. I think he was intending to just be nice and friendly. He brought us snacks, like, super hospitable. It was just something that we were really uncomfortable with. And in hindsight, I kind of feel like we should have just not done that in general. Like, I just think that the decisions we're making around Yosemite are kind of a little bit of a miss.
And we've had a couple couch surfing experiences now, and quite a few more kind of like misses on couch surfing, where we've gone on and messaged people and then like eventually found out that's not going to work.
What would you say like are the lessons we've learned about couch surfing since kind of starting to experiment with it a month ago?
I mean, it's been more than a month that we've been experimenting with it because we hosted a couple of people, which was a couple of months ago. But the first time I actually downloaded couch surfing was when I was on my road trip from Alberta to Atlanta, and I found somebody in like the Sioux Falls, South Dakota area, and I'd planned to stay with them. And then, you know, a couple hours before I'm supposed to arrive, he texts me that he actually has to fly out on business and I can't stay there. And so then that puts me in like a bit of a bind. It puts me in a last minute situation where I need to find somewhere else to stay. Thank goodness for Airbnb, which we've talked about, you know, on our road trips, romance versus reality episode, and we've talked about it a ton in our road tripping episodes here. It's just like paying a little bit of money makes it so much more like legitimate. So I think that I've learned that like it's not as accountable. Like you can't, like it's always kind of like last minute, like, oh, is this actually going to happen? So you kind of have to be a bit flexible in that regard. I think you have to be flexible with the situation because both of our experiences here have been people like, I don't know if they think they need to entertain us or it's just how they live, but it's like we've arrived there being like ready to just chill out and sleep, and it's like they bring friends over and they're like, friends are like, hey, let's hang out, and we're like, we don't really want to hang out, like we kind of just want to, you know, like I'm happy to interact with the host, but I don't need like some party thrown. And I don't know if that's just like, I don't really know if that's actually
if it's
what it
just
was,
like a random occurrence or something. I mean, I think it seems like a couple times that it's been like, oh hey, like I've got people coming over, couch surfers, like you guys should come hang out with us, kind of thing.
But I think also too, something that I've really learned, sort of being the one who's like operating the actual app, is you really have to look carefully at people's profiles. And I think that, you know, the more experiences we have, I think age is definitely something that's important to me. Like having somebody in our demographic or maybe a little bit older, and just like reading what they're interested in, because I think you can get a good feel for a person just based on their profile. And knowing that like a free platform does attract sort of like more of a free-spirited, sort of eclectic type of person in general. What have been some of your biggest learnings, or your biggest learning?
I think it's just kind of like constantly reminds me that although there is like no monetary cost involved with couch surfing, like there are plenty of other costs, and that kind of like you said, paying for Airbnb I think is often like a better decision in terms of just like total value. Like we've spent quite a bit of time messaging people, don't need to find out that's not going to work, or you know, getting somewhere and it's like, hey, we just kind of are in the mood to sleep, and you get into a situation where you're like socializing, which is obviously like fun, and it's like I think good for you to kind of get put in situations where you don't feel like super comfortable, but it is really nice to be able to just like pay for a room at an Airbnb and like you're just gonna sleep there, and if you want to like be social, like there's still that opportunity to get to know your host, and depending on the Airbnb it's sometimes more social like that, but yeah, when you're staying somewhere for free you feel like all these like there's like slight sense of obligation to socialize and like be someone's friend and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely, and sometimes that can be a lot. I know I did read on blogs before we started hosting couch surfers that it was like a guy who did it quite a bit, and he was like, you know, when I'm really tired and I don't feel like talking to anyone, he's like, I actually go like the Airbnb or the hostel route instead of doing couch surfing, which I think totally makes sense. Like I think that if you're not looking to interact, that you probably shouldn't be couch surfing. I guess, like you probably shouldn't expect to just crash on somebody's couch. I think though, like it is a really cool way to meet new people, especially if you're like by yourself and you're staying somewhere and you want to get to know like some locals and get some recommendations. I think that that's a really cool opportunity, and obviously being free is like helpful if you're really tight on cash. But yeah, I think I messaged almost every single couch surfer in Santa Fe and Moab, and like all of them said no. And I know that there's a ton of people that I said no to when we were living in Atlanta, just because it's like, it's a lot to have somebody in your house when you're really like getting nothing from it outside of the interaction with this person. And so I can definitely understand from a hosting point of view, and then I can also understand from like a surfer point of view, sort of like both sides of it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, from the host point of view, like, the trade you're making is like the inconvenience of having someone in your home and using your facilities is going to be worth it by having like a meaningful, interesting interaction, which it's kind of tough to predict from someone's couchsurfing profile, it seems like, so far. Like, a lot of people don't put much work into their couchsurfing profile.
Yeah, and something else that's kind of like tough about finding places to stay is that a lot of people want you to like put detail into your message, so they want to see that you've like read their profile, so you write something about something you've read. And so it actually takes time to message people. Like, generic one-off messages don't really work. And I know even from a hosting point of view, like people who are just like, hey, I'm coming through town, can I stay with you? I was like, did you even read anything about me? Like, why do you want to stay with me? And so I understand that from the hosting point of view, and then from the surfer point of view, it's like, it's a lot of work, and then most people say no. So, but we've definitely had, an interesting learning experience. I don't think we're writing off couch surfing from this experience. I think it's just something that we're kind of like adding to the files of learning for next time type thing. Is that how you feel?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the benefits are different depending on who you are. So for us, like as a couple, I think the benefit of couch surfing isn't as high as someone who's like maybe a bit younger, traveling by themselves. Like, that's when you really get this cool community experience. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So apart from actually having this kerfuffle happening around couch surfing, we actually got to go through Yosemite on day 1 and then back into Yosemite Valley on day 2 and do a little bit of hiking. Yosemite is one of the most famous national parks probably in the world, and those images that you get of the cliffs and the waterfalls from the back of Yosemite Valley are some of the most famous images around. If you haven't seen them, definitely go onto the show notes and check them out on the World Wanderers website. So we had both been really excited to go to Yosemite. How did it compare to expectations?
So I think that the mountains in the park itself met my expectations. I think that the entire situation, the couch surfing and just where we were staying in general was, I don't want to say like frustrating, because I think it was like sort of my fault that I didn't research better, but I think it made for a lot of driving, which made the park a little bit less enjoyable.
Yeah, and so we didn't have actually that much time to explore the valley.
The reason why I regret not being able to hike more is because it just seems like everywhere that you can go in that park has really beautiful views, and I would have loved to see a little bit more.
Yeah, and with a situation like that, which we're definitely familiar with being here in Banff near Lake Louise, where you've got like a ton of people there visiting, but most people don't actually go that far. So at Lake Louise, for example, if you go for like hiking for an hour, you get to a spot where there aren't actually that many people, even though there's a ton. And I think at Yosemite, that's a good thing too. Like since we did the really short walk that's like right near the valley, there was like just a ton of people.
Definitely, yeah.
And so it's nice to go a little bit further away from that, maybe like a little bit harder hike, and get a bit further away from the crowds.
Yeah, for sure. So after the day that we spent in Yosemite, we stayed overnight outside of the park, and then we made our way about like 4 or 5 hours north to where my good friend Chelsea was staying, which is actually Hornbrook, California. For those of you who don't know that, it's really close to Ashland, Oregon. So very northern part of California, right by the Oregon border. And I've talked about her on a couple different episodes. She's the best friend that I made from yoga teacher training in Bali last year. And she lives in Bozeman, Montana, but actually had like a really cool opportunity to like live and work on a goat farm for the summer. And so I was like, yeah, cool. If we can stay on the goat farm, that'd be pretty cool. I've never done anything like that. So arriving there was pretty outside of my comfort zone. It was pretty neat to meet the woman that she's staying with, the woman who owns the farm. She started it entirely on her own, built her property. She has chickens that lay eggs there. She has goats that she sells. She's got a couple horses, a massive amount of land where the horses and the dogs can run and play, and a garden and like a solar panel. And it's just like it was a cool place to hang out.
Yeah, it's this really picturesque location where you kind of turn off the highway, head up a gravel thing, and then you get to a point where you're not actually too far from the interstate, but because of the way the hills are, this small ranch house is kind of perched up on top of a hill. And from that point, it looks like you can't really see anything else. There's just mountains. You get like beautiful sunsets on the kind of like the golden hills. A very picturesque location to spend a few days. And then from there, Ashland is only a short drive away. Ashland, Oregon is kind of this like funky hippie town in Oregon. So we were able to go check that out as well while we were there.
Yeah, we got to go to the farmer's market and eat some good food. And I mean, that's kind of like every time I visited Chelsea, and even like a theme when we were in Bali, it was just like eating good food and having good conversation. And that was kind of what the 2 days that we spent with her on the goat farm in Hornbrook were. And I mean, I would have loved to stay longer and continue to visit, but time was of the essence. So we just stayed a couple days and then we made our way north towards Portland.
Yeah, and Portland was the last real stop on our trip. We were going to split our drive home into 2 days, but we arrived in Portland and then we do a bit of a check-in on where our heads were at.
Yeah.
Such a pretty long day of driving from Hornbrook, California, which is the very northern part of California, where we were staying on a goat ranch with my friend Chelsea. We have arrived in Portland. And if you were to look on a map, you would see that it's not very far from Hornbrook to Portland, but we made a detour into Crater Lake, which I think...
We actually avoided Crater Lake, thankfully.
What?
We didn't drive into it.
Oh.
That would have been bad.
Well, we drove around it.
We drove around, yeah.
And that was definitely worth the added hours to the trip, I think. I mean, we've been driving for a couple of weeks now, so we're fairly tired of spending time in the car. But Crater Lake is probably one of the most amazing natural things I've ever seen. It's like this massive crater that goes about 1,200 feet deep at its deepest. It's an old volcano, and it's filled with just outstanding blue water. What did you think of Crater Lake?
Yeah, I mean, it's spectacular. And it's funny because the only reason we found out about it was doing this Flyover America ride at the Mall of America in Minnesota. We were there about a month ago and saw the view of Crater Lake. And we're like, oh my God, where is that? And then found it. Turns out it's on our road trip route. So yeah, it's really cool. You drive up this mountain and it kind of looks like unsuspecting. I'd seen photos, so I knew what to expect. But
we flew over it.
Yeah, but you drive up, it kind of just looks like another mountain. Then you pop up and it's just like it's hard to describe how blue the lake is, but it's not like that turquoisey glacial blue, but like just like a little bit darker, but like vivid blue that looks like the most refreshing water ever.
Yeah, and it's like brighter than like the bluest sky I think I've ever seen. It's just incredible. So definitely worth the drive if you're in, I don't know, sort of the eastern Oregon, northern California area. I would definitely recommend it. And we've had a pretty nice and relaxing last couple of days hanging out on the goat farm with Chelsea, and now getting into Portland. We've got a couple days here, which will essentially be like the last days exploring of our road trip. How are you feeling as it comes to a close?
It's been a really fun time, but I am excited to be finished the road trip. Specifically to be finished driving around the car. I mean, I think we've probably put on I don't know, maybe like 40 hours of driving over the last 12 days.
Yeah, 14 days. Yeah, it's been like pretty intense driving, like even within the first couple of days. Like within, I don't know, 3 days we'd made it to New Mexico, which is across like 5 states, I think, maybe 6 states. And so we've just kind of been like hauling ass the entire time. And I think that that's something that's kind of interesting about a road trip is like, you know, if you've got a lot of time and you can stay like longer times in places, I think it might not be as exhausting as we're finding it. But I think we're just tired between like having only a short period of time in these really cool places. So we do a lot of stuff and we hop in the car and we drive for like hours and hours, which is a different type of exhaustion. Would you agree?
Yes, I concur.
And so what are you looking forward to most about Portland?
We are wandering out to check out a dispensary and hopefully get some sort of edible cannabis to partake in. So that's not on my hit list for things I'm excited about. But yeah, the city looks beautiful. A little bit more temperate than some of the places we've been recently.
Well, I mean, getting to Northern California was like a little bit of a shock to the system. I was like, wow, I haven't been like shivering cold outside for like months, really.
Yeah. And then one other weird thing about Oregon that we found out on our road trip that we probably wouldn't have figured out if we hadn't been driving was that in 2016, it is illegal to pump your own gas in Oregon. So Amanda and I pulled up to a gas station. A friend had told us this before, but it didn't sink in, obviously.
We just forgot. I mean, it's so habitual to pump your own gas.
Amanda gets out of the driver's seat, goes around the corner, puts her card in, takes her card out, starts to reach for the gas pump handle, and then boom, gas station attendant, no, don't touch it.
It's illegal.
It's illegal.
She's like, you can get a ticket for that. I was like, wow, that's a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So we're not really sure why in 2016 the state of Oregon has legalized marijuana and has...
Assisted suicide, also legal.
Oh, and has still kept like self-gasolining illegal. It's pretty crazy. But we're out to find some food and whatnot, so we'll check in a little bit later.
After a couple weeks on the road, Portland was a place that we were both super excited to get to. We both heard spectacular things about the city, about the food scene, the coffee scene, and we were excited to kind of just like chill out and not drive for a couple days. We stayed 3 full nights and had 2 full days in Portland, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that was the place that we stayed the longest in our entire road trip. And so before having our road trip come to a close, it was pretty amazing to just have a couple days to like chill out and kind of regroup after being on the road and being so go.
Yeah, and one of the things we like most about traveling is getting to check out cool restaurants, cool cafes, and just things that are more like experiential than like sightseeing. So Portland's a great city for that, where there's cool parks and amazing food and all this other cool stuff to check out. So we were really, really happy to be there and take a few days off of driving.
Yeah, definitely. Portland is more known for its like livability and just like its craft beer and its kombucha and its coffee and good food, more so than like New York, where there's all this like crazy stuff to see and do. And so it's kind of a place where you don't really have like a bucket list going in. You've just got, an open schedule, and then you fill it in with a lot of restaurants and walking around and exploring.
Yeah, so we check in on our last morning in Portland. We just eaten some delicious breakfast tacos, and we talk about our time there.
So we just ate had a fabulous caffeinated beverage and then ate some fabulous breakfast tacos. And that sort of concept has sort of been a trend for the last couple days in Portland.
What concept?
Drinking good caffeinated beverages, eating good food. It's kind of been like what we've done in Portland. Would you not agree?
I would agree with that, yeah. Today was very representative of what we've been doing in Portland. Just gorging ourselves on delicious food and drinks.
Yeah, definitely. And so what have been some highlights for you?
Some highlights of Portland. Well, for one, the cooler temperature has been nice.
It's like cool and refreshing here this morning, which we haven't had for quite a while.
Yeah.
We were staying right near Hawthorne in Portland, so that's kind of between Hawthorne and Division streets, which are both popular streets with a ton of good food and interesting places to go. So yeah, we've been to a lot of good restaurants. The city's really beautiful in the summer. Lots of cool places to drink and eat.
Yeah, that's basically been what we've been doing, and we've eaten at some really good restaurants: Bollywood Theater, Pok Pok, got ice cream from Salt and Straw.
Yeah, except with the like popular, well-known places that weren't that busy because we were here midweek.
Yeah, just got breakfast tacos at Stella Tacos on Division, and that was really delicious. And also the kombucha brand Townsend's is brewed here.
Brew Doctor.
Yeah, so Brew Doctor Kombucha is brewed here, and they've got an amazing tea shop that we spent quite a bit of time at yesterday. But I think one of the best things about Portland and why it's been such a great place to sort of end this road trip is that we haven't really been doing that much. It's just been sort of wandering around, exploring. We've slept in each day. The days have been not as packed as some of our other days. Not like go, go, go constantly. So it's been nice to kind of chill out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so how are you feeling? We're heading back to Canada tomorrow.
I kind of wish I had a teleporter so we didn't have to do 16 hours of driving.
That's your entire feeling? Are you excited to be back in Canada?
Yeah, I think I'm excited too.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy, and we've talked a lot, like off the mic, about what it's been like to, or what it's like to sort of just end this journey that started. I mean, for Ryan back in September, and even before that with the visa process and whatnot, it's been quite the time. So
yeah, this morning I was lying in bed and it kind of like hit me for the first time, like, oh wow, this is over, going back to Canada.
Yeah, so we'll touch base a little bit later, just in regards to how we're feeling as we get closer and closer to the border. Ciao.
So heading up from Portland, we were excited to just have a couple of smooth days on the road, finish our road trip, get home. So we headed out and we're staying in Sandpoint, Idaho. So after stopping for dinner in Spokane and going to Sandpoint, really excited just to have a calm night and then get on our way the next day. But when we got there, started unpacking the car, we realized we were missing something. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so we just arrived at our
quarter mile, turn left onto Gun Club Road.
Airbnb, and you can hear the Google directions in the background because we also just left our Airbnb just outside of Sandpoint, Idaho. We stopped at a Chipotle for dinner in Spokane, Washington, and then we got to our Airbnb in Idaho, which is about an hour away. Go to unpack our stuff and realize that my backpack's not in it. And the backpack is probably the only bag that we really didn't want to lose because it had both of our passports in there. Like all of our most valuable stuff was in the backpack. So that's why I took it out of the car when we went places. And the very last day of the trip, leave it at a restaurant, so we're rushing back in hopes that we'll find it intact.
Wish us luck.
Yeah, we'll catch up later.
All right, so we've made it back to Spokane. We've gotten the goods, and we're making our way back to Sandpoint. How are you feeling?
Really happy that I didn't end up losing my backpack. Grateful that everything's still in there. So.
Yeah, and that's pretty important too, because it's one thing if somebody turns in a backpack once they've stolen all your stuff out of it, but it's another thing to get it back completely untouched. So I feel like it's like a reminder that there's good people out there and that things don't always work out terribly.
Yeah. Really thankful for the people who participated in keeping that safe for the past couple hours.
Yeah, and so, this could happen to anybody. What have you learned from this experience?
It's funny because I'm like usually really like hyper aware of my stuff.
Yeah, it's the reason my passport was in that bag.
So I think like before we've been traveling before, and people have like mentioned like, oh, I put my backpack down on the floor, and someone stole it while I wasn't paying attention. It's like, how could that ever happen to you? But I feel like today was kind of that day for me where I just not paying attention.
Yeah. Do you think too, I know it's something that we've talked about in other podcast episodes, is that we always split up our valuables, and that's actually not something that we did on this road trip.
Yeah, I think that's big. Just having your things, your eggs in different baskets.
Yeah. So if you were to do this again, would you put your eggs in different backpacks? It's late. We've been driving for a while. Bear with me.
Maybe. The thing that's, like, I think it was important to me because a lot of times we leave the car and our car's got a lot of stuff in it. And so with my most valuable stuff, I was like, okay, I'll hold on to this. This is the safest way to go with it. So I don't know if I would do it differently.
Yeah. Just like if you do have a bag that has a lot of stuff, just being like hyper present with it.
Yeah, I just kind of like tossed it on a chair and like left it there. So remembering what is in there is probably important.
Yeah, so crisis has been diverted. No,
Crisis diverted.
Yeah.
Crisis. Is that the way you say that?
I think so. It could have been a crisis if we didn't have passports to get back into Canada tomorrow. But it looks like the universe wants us to go back to Canada, so we're gonna go. All right, we'll check in the morning.
Bye-bye.
So thank God we got that bag back, because the end of this episode would have been a little bit different than it is right now had we not. And I don't really know if I'm interested in that alternative ending.
Yeah, in a different dimension.
Yeah, I just don't even want to know what that looks like.
Much more frustrated ending to the podcast. So we spent the night in Sandpoint, which is actually like a popular vacation spot in the Northwest US. It's right on a big lake. There's some sand, I think a couple points. So people like to go down there and check it out. Yeah. And we'd actually driven through it before one time as well.
Yeah, and I actually went there as a kid as well. My grandparents live in Creston in British Columbia, which is super close. So it's definitely somewhere that's cool to check out. Obviously, we didn't really have the time to do that because we got back super late after our adventure back to Spokane, and then we got up the next morning and basically headed on the road again to cross the border. I wanted to cross the border as early as possible just in case we ran into any situations, which we didn't, thankfully.
Yeah.
And so obviously now we are back in Canada because we got our passports back from Chipotle, and we had no problems crossing the border. And it was pretty strange to cross the border. It's like if you're Canadian and you cross into America, it's like it looks really similar, but there's just small things about it that you're like, I'm in the US now. And it was kind of the opposite coming back, but we were so used to the American things that we're like, oh, we need to stop somewhere to eat, but there's no Whole Foods, there's no Chipotle, there's no, where do we eat again? Like, what things do we like in Canada? I don't even know. Oh, there's like a bunch of Tim Hortons. Haven't been there in ages. It's just sort of this weird adjustment and adjusting to kilometers per hour again. My car actually doesn't have miles per hour, so I've just been converting in my head or following traffic for the entirety of my time in the United States. So it's weird being like, oh, 70K, okay, that's not 110K, that's like actually 70K. And just like strange little things like that upon crossing the border.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny from my perspective, and I think probably from yours as well, where it was like, we finished our time in Atlanta and then went on this road trip. But this road trip was really like this exciting thing to look forward to. And it kind of prevented like thinking back, like, oh, this experience is over, we're moving. And I feel like those last, that like, you know, getting back into Canada was like, okay, now the road trip's over. And like my time living in the States is over. That was kind of like really hit me like, oh, wow, big life changes
Yeah.
happening
So
right
we
now.
roll out to like the Canadian Border Patrol. It's like, oh, whoa, this is happening. And so just to kind of like touch on or sort of finish up with the entire road trip, what do you think your favorite place on the road trip was, or like the biggest highlight for you?
Favorite places on the road trip. So Portland is definitely one of them. That city I really enjoyed being in.
Mm-hmm.
Vegas I like surprisingly enjoyed, because I kind of been like skeptical because I'm not huge, like a huge club party guy. But yeah, I really just enjoyed how like interesting it was. The heat was a bit unbearable. But seeing these casinos are just amazing. Like, and there's just like so much interesting stuff to do and see there.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I really enjoyed the views that we got going through the parks. The only thing was that I feel like it would have been really nicer to be equipped for like a big trip like that, where we're going on a national park trip, we're camping, we got our camping equipment, we got our hiking equipment.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of your highlights?
I think Arches National Park was probably my favorite day on the trip. I'd been looking forward to seeing that for so long, and it just like exceeded all expectations that I had, which my expectations were pretty freaking high. So that was pretty amazing. And then I also really liked Portland. Portland was probably my favorite city on the entire drive. I also really liked Santa Fe. Santa Fe was cool. And then seeing Chelsea is always really fun for me. And I think that it's really cool that she happened to be in Northern California as we were driving through. Just like, what are the chances of that, So,
well, I mean, we probably wouldn't have gone to Northern California if.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
there.
our road trip would have been different had she not been there. Maybe we would have gone through Montana instead. But I think that it all worked out really well, and we got to see Portland because of it. And Crater Lake. Crater Lake was another thing that was amazing.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that.
And I think sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you can finish your point.
I was going to say, I think that the lowest point for me was probably the couch surfing incident that we talked about on this episode. Just not being more honest and assertive and being more like passive and unopen. Like, I was afraid of hurting his feelings because he was being so sweet to us, and it was just an overall uncomfortable situation. So a lot of good learnings from that for sure.
Yeah. What was something that you really enjoyed that you didn't expect, or like something that wasn't like Arches was like something you were looking forward to? What was something you weren't looking forward to but enjoyed?
Oh, that's a really good question. In-N-Out Burger. I think.
Yeah. So we got In-N-Out Burger on our day when we were driving from Yosemite up to Northern California in some random town. It was actually really good.
Yeah, I mean, people talk it up, but I'm like just not a burger person. Like, I really don't eat beef ever. And I was like, I'm an In-N-Out Burger. I'm probably going to come here once in my life. And yeah, they make lettuce wraps. Their French fries are delicious. Like, I didn't feel good after, but it was pretty delicious.
Yeah. And then, so we also had just a ton of good food along the way. A lot of Mexican food. Like, we went in Memphis to Babalu. That restaurant was amazing. Yeah, just the whole way. Quite a good few taco. Stopping in at Torchy's in Oklahoma was awesome.
Yeah. Texas, you mean?
Oh yeah, Texas. Lots of good margaritas.
And now that we're back in Canada, lots of really good Caesars, which trump all those margaritas.
Debatable.
Do you have anything else that you want to touch base about with the road trip before we...
Oh, and then the other thing that was really like sticks out to me was just we had quite a few good Airbnb experiences. The place we stayed in Memphis was really cool. A funky place. That was a lot of fun and like a nice, like comfortable spot after we were feeling a bit nervous about it. And then Santa Fe. Santa Fe was just solid, like exactly what we needed. And then Portland was a blast. They had 2 dogs there. One was like the cutest little pug named Bear that just was like it's kind of a maniac a little bit.
Little ball of energy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite Airbnbs I've ever stayed at. So definitely some great Airbnbs. And if you have never used Airbnb, you can definitely get started with the $25 off coupon. You can just go to www.theworldwanders.com/Airbnb. We love Airbnb. So if you haven't used it, just go and use it because it's amazing. It'll change your life.
Yeah, and then Sandpoint as well was really awesome. But yeah, that's one of the big things where it's like, it was like such a crucial part of this road trip was being able to like stay in people's houses.
Totally, yeah.
So it would be funny thinking about how, like, if you're trying to do this like 10 years ago, it'd be a pain in the ass.
You could say that. Do you have anything else?
No, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. If anyone has any questions about our road trip or anywhere that we stopped along the way, things that we didn't touch on, advice for next time we do this, definitely reach out to us, info@theworldwanders.com. We always love to hear from you.
Until next time. To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanders.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanders.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanders or on Twitter at WorldWanders1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.